So good afternoon and good evening to everyone that's joined us. Thanks so much for being here. On behalf of everyone involved in putting this webinar series together, I'd like to welcome you to the first virtual orchard meetup of 2022. In 2021, we launched a virtual meetup series on honeycrisp production, and this was a collaboration between extension specialists in Washington, New York, and Michigan with support from the IFTA and the Root to Fruit SCRI project team. That series offered a space for dynamic discussion between honeycrisp producers and industry members across the United States, with a panelist of experts in each meeting answering questions. This year, the theme of our series is Orchard Efficiencies, Labor, and Technology. We've expanded our team to include all of North America, and our extension team includes Bernadita Salato from Washington State University, Maria Miranda Sazo from Cornell Cooperative Extension, Christy Greg McCuffin from OMAFRA in Canada, Daniel Weber from Penn State University Extension, and myself, Anna Wallace from Michigan State University Extension. So again, this year, it's a 4-part series, and webinars are being offered on Thursday evenings every other week, or Thursday afternoon. And we've gathered a group of panelists for each webinar who are experts and leaders in the industry on both labor and technology. This first webinar focuses on grower experiences in workforce management and labor. There's some of the leaders in the industry that we've identified, but we know a lot of people in the industry are also making great changes and leading efforts. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. So we'll begin by hearing an introduction from each of our panelists, and then the remainder of the time will be used for discussion. So we hope you brought your questions, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Anna. And hi, everybody. I am Bernadita Salato, Washington State University Extension, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to Robert Mcgraw. He works for Gilbert Orchards. You can see there a couple of pictures of who is Robert Mcgraw, and we call him Rob. And I invited him because I met him a couple of years ago, and I thought that the vision and the way they manage their people was very unique. And so I really wanted him to share his experience and everything that he's been doing successfully, and also the challenges with the whole industry. So thank you, Robert, for agreeing to be a panelist in this group. And I will leave you now to introduce yourself and your company.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernadito. Like she said, my name is Robert Mcgraw. I'm the general manager of Gilbert Orchards here in Washington State. We are a mid-sized grower, packer, shipper operation, and we're growing and packing apples on about 4,000 plus acres of irrigated farmland here in Washington. Our workforce is made up of somewhere around 1,000 H2A workers, and another 400 to 1,000 people that are here from the local area that support the orchards, as well as the packing sheds and the winery that we have. Of course, we advertise locally first for labor, and whatever positions we can't fill, we fill by using the H2A guest worker program. Our farm is a family-owned farm, and so culture is very important to us. And we found that our H2A workforce has become a real foundational part of what we're doing here, and we've worked hard to make them a real part of our family and in our organization. We consider ourselves a bottom-up organization. We spend a lot of time playing soccer and teaching ESL and celebrating birthdays and really making an effort to make our H2A workers a part of what we're doing here. And then at the end of the season, when the last apple's picked, we follow them back home to Mexico to be a part of their lives there. And so that's us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rob. Mario, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity to have today with us Robert Brown, Bobby Brown, with Beth. There you can see their kids in that picture. And I see so that picture say a lot about what Orchard Del Fruit company is doing today. I see so they have been training their employees, their orchard managers. And I would like to invite you, Bobby, if you can say a few things about your farm.
Well, thank you, Mario. Good evening, everybody. If you can't hear me, just let me know. But my name is Robert Brown. I'm a 8th generation fruit grower. We grow about 400 acres of apples and 20 acres of strawberries and blueberries. We're vertically integrated, managed by family and employees. We specialize in Honeycrisp, Minneska, Gala, Fuji. We try to plant everything now on a vertical wall, irrigation. We're here today on labor. We've got a lot of history, I would say, of continued education in my family, from extension through Cornell, et cetera. And we've tried to instill a lot of that in our workers, whether it be middle management or just everyday farm laborers. It's important to us. They are our biggest asset. I always like to tell my guys or our guys or our workers that this is your farm. You're here to feed your families, and we have a lot of families to feed. So everything we do, we have to do a good job with. Besides just the consumers, it's all about our family back at home. There's always a story with laborers with H2A. Rob touched on some of that, and I think that's what's so neat about what we do. We've used H2A program since the 80s, early 1980s. And we've really developed a lot of generations, some good referrals. The program kind of runs itself. And when you get to that point, you can create a culture. And inside the community, you can gain more acceptance. And it's just great to have. You can really build a strong company. I think we might touch a little bit more, maybe in the Q&A, on some labor technologies, efficiencies, trainings. We've been doing that through improved equipment ideas, data collection. That's probably our biggest way we can harness efficiencies and give our employees feedback through video, communication, operating procedures, and different applications. I'll just finish with this. Before we got on, I added up the number of phone apps we use, and there's at least a half a dozen of them. So anything is possible. And this crew of guys down here, there's about 50, 60 guys standing there. I know every single one of them. They all do such a good job. Couldn't say the least. We do soccer together. We do parties together besides just work. So thank you, and leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks so much, Bobby. So next, I'd like to introduce from Michigan, Riveridge, and Steve Skelos from that company. And so when we started this webinar series, I was excited to engage with Riveridge. They're one of the leaders in the industry in both labor and technology. They're a vertically integrated company that just has pioneered a lot of novel advancements in our region. So Steve, if you wanted to take a minute to introduce yourself and your farm and company.
Yes. Like she said, I'm Steve Skelos from Michigan, West Michigan area. We're around the Sparta, north of Grand Rapids area. And we are further north, about another 45, 50 miles also. We're in 4 different counties. Once again, we're a vertically integrated company also, grower, packer, shipper, process apples. We do about 50% of the fresh market out of Michigan. Almost all of Michigan apples go through, half of it goes through us, our sales team and stuff. Recently, we've become the 2nd largest producer of cider also in the country. We sell to a lot of main retailers on this side of the Mississippi. We also go on the other side also with a couple of retailers. Our acreages listed are 600 acres of apples, 33 acres of sweet cherries, with an additional 100 that we're going to be planting in the near future. this farm operation started about 120 acres in about 2006. So we're kind of new at it. I mean, we're not like a lot of the people in the region that are family integrated, but we, a lot of us on the team have, fruit background and stuff. So it makes us a very young team, very energetic, very, growing with a lot of different versatility with the people on the team, and also gives us new ideas with our laborers and workers also. And I like to refer to our workers as River Ridge team members. I try to keep that in my talks with them. I refer to them as employees. Let's see what else. Yeah, and we do some row crops. So some of our workers we have trained to drive truck, drive more outside of the fruit area tractors as far as row crops. So give them a diversity. And even running platforms that we have in the orchard, and also having the women also learn to drive tractor and fill in the spaces too. This kind of gives everybody a little more excitement that they can, have a possibility to change different. People look excited as far as that goes. We also have our regular helpers that we've kept, I guess they could claim as domestics, but we keep them as River Ridge employees, obviously. And we also have our own H2A that we do contract ourselves, and we have outside contract also. So a little bit diversified in all three. So I guess that's kind of a little bit of an update there as far as that goes.
That's great. Thank you so much, Steve. So next, Christy.
Yeah, thank you. So it's my pleasure to introduce the Ontario grower for this panel. Manas Bunzar is with Algoma Orchards in Newcastle, Ontario, Canada, and he's the field manager. So this, not only do they produce quite a significant acreage in the province, but also have a packing and bottling facility as well. So Manas, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, folks. Hope you can hear me well. We are located about 55 miles east of Toronto, right on the shore of Lake Ontario. Our orchards are in about a 20-kilometer radius, which is awesome for frost protection most years, like last year, but it's terrible for daily logistics. And as labor is the main topic, that's a lot of moving guys all over the farms. So we grow apples in different aspects. We have a small pick-your-own operation that we operate, strawberries, apples, sweet corn a little bit on the side. We grow organic apples. That's about 120 acres of organic, and then the rest is all conventional. On the farm side, we are about 75% Mexican workers and 25% out of the Caribbean, which is usually a mix between Barbados and Jamaica. Most of our workers come up for 6 to 8 months per season. Our program, I guess, is a little different than the H2A program. We are allowed 8 months at a time. We do bring our workers up for longer than the average grower in our province because we are in a growing phase still. We try to plant about 100 acres of orchard every year. So that creates a lot of work early season, all the way to hand thinning. And then in August, when it's our slow time of the year, we try and transfer out a bunch of workers to different crops or different farms, and then they come back right in harvest time, October for us. So our biggest challenge here is housing. Really, we've got a very short picking window. We only pick for 5-6 weeks out of the season or of the year. So we have a lot of apples to pick in that short window. So we need a lot of help in that time. Right now, I have a lot of workers here already. We were very fortunate in the last 2 years, considering all things of the whole COVID time, that we did have access to workers. On our farm side, we only have about 6 full-time employees on the farm. That's not including maintenance. The maintenance department for operation falls under the plant. The plant runs about 10 months out of the year, 2 shifts. So they run about 50, 60 people per shift. The plant is also operating on local temp agencies, local workers, and some of the offshore workers. We are, we're trying to, make it as homey as possible for the offshore guys, keep them busy. Everyone is here just to do one job, and that's what we're all trying to accomplish. We try to spend a lot of time on training, daily, weekly, bi-weekly. We spend a lot of time from the top down. We always focus on making sure everyone knows why they do a certain job. That's the biggest thing, is we try not to tell someone just to follow orders. If you just follow orders, if you want to follow orders, this is not the farm for you. We want to make sure everyone knows exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And the fun part about that is that people correct a lot of my mistakes, because after a while they pick up on what needs to happen. So, like I said, we are just east of Toronto. It's kind of hard for a lot of people to picture where we are, but maturity-wise, right now, I won't be able to find an apple that's 10 millimeter fruit size. So to give you guys an example, we are a little bit behind most of you guys. So yeah, that's about us.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for introducing yourselves. I guess before we move forward, just a couple of housekeeping items. So everyone that's joined us, I think a lot of people have become really familiar with Zoom over the past couple of years. We've done a lot more virtual programming, and I love that we're taking advantage of learning that to connect in this way across the country and the whole continent. And so just in case you haven't spent time on Zoom lately, there are a couple of ways you can interact for this Q&A. So you can put information in the chat. We prefer that you not use that. If you have technical questions or technical difficulties, you could use the chat to interact with us. But if you have a question you'd like to pose to the panelists, if you would do that in the Q&A window. And so if you hover near the top or bottom of your screen, you should see a panel of menu items that you can choose from, and click Q&A, and we'll try to field questions in that way. If we find an opportunity later, we can have people raise their hands and we can unmute mics and take questions through audio. So I know the extension team has a lot of questions that we've asked. We've met with everyone on the panel earlier and had a great discussion. So I don't know if Mario and Daniel, if you wanted to lead off with a few questions, or what you'd like to do next, or we can open the floor. If people that are participating would like to ask questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A.
Thank you, Anna. And yeah, this is Daniel has a bunch of questions. So perhaps we can go in order of each of you guys, the panelists, and if you could break down how your workforce is structured. So if you could say how many employees does your business have? How many of them are full-time permanent employees? How many of them are employed seasonally? And if you have a full-time human resource person, or do you rely on contractors for managing all of or part of your workforce? I don't know if each of you could cover some of that for us to understand how your workforce is structured. Perhaps we can start with you, Robert, from Washington. Do you want to start and mute your mute there? Perfect.
There we go. I'd be happy to start.
Thank you.
Yes, so our structure is made up with, I'm at the top of the chain of command, and below me, we would have 7 regional managers for 7 different regions in Washington State. And each of these managers oversees somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 700 or 800 acres of apples and cherries and wine grapes. And underneath each manager, he would probably have a supervisor and a spray supervisor and somebody that helps him with chemical records and that sort of thing. And beneath that layer, he would have crew bosses, and the crew leaders are really the guys out in the field getting it done. Each crew leader is responsible for 25 workers. And the workers are what makes up our workforce out in the fields, doing the day-to-day training and labor and the harvesting of fruit. Now, above that, we do have a structure, a primary structure at our main office that has a human resources department and some information technology things going on. And we even have our own horticulture team that assists the managers in providing information for day-to-day horticultural decisions that they make in the field. So basically, that's how we do it. We house our guys in houses that house 50 people per house, 25 people per floor. So it's real important to us that each 25-person unit is a unit in a house. And that unit, within that unit, usually his crew leader lives in that same housing unit with them. And so they help them to make decisions not only at work, but if they have decisions or problems outside of work, they can help them with those also. So that's kind of how we're made up.
Do you want to go ahead, Bobby, to share a little bit about your workforce structure? Bobby?
Yeah, good evening again. I just wrote it down quick. Our farm's kind of small. We're owner, operator, the whole thing. I do a lot with day-to-day operations, and my wife does a lot with our business administration. She manages a lot of the in-house, inside labor part of it. I do everything out in the field. We've got besides owners, we've got 3 full-time employees, and then our H2A is our only other source of labor. Right now, we have about 45, and apple harvest will probably go up to 90 this year. We've got a lot of Honeycrisp, et cetera, that we really peak out at different times. We have a horticulture senior supervisor. He's working his way up to manager. Mario knows him very well. His name's Pedro Gomez, great guy. Also have spray supervisors, crop load management supervisor, irrigation manager. He has 2 coordinators under him. And then I've got a wonderful kid. He's our equipment manager, and he can do just about anything. We're getting involved this year a lot more with vision technology and everything. So we're all kind of working at that as a team. It's kind of exciting. That's about it. Did that answer it all, Mario?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's overall kind of to get an idea. We have many questions after that. Then I'm gonna be asking you guys. Steve, can you share a little bit with us, Steve?
Yes. Yep. Same thing here. We're about 30 employees full time that we have year round, and they basically conduct the day-to-day with the spraying in the summertime, basically housing repairs and whatnot in the wintertime, and with the trimming and with all the trees and orchards during the winter, throughout the winter. We have about 9 tractor drivers, which has a leader with them. We have 2 other crew leaders that work out in the orchard as far as with the plantings. This year we just started our first contract, bring them in ourselves with our own transportation, housing, and there's 13 of them, 13 people. So, and when we did that, we were a little nervous as to how we should start the H2A program, and we basically just asked our regular employees, if they had family members that would like to come, and we based it on that. Obviously, performance at the end of the year was what we use for for return and all that stuff to kind of keep a progress report. But it worked out very well because a lot of our regular community employees now have family members that are up here throughout the summer helping out, and it works out very nice because they help them for transportation, help them integrate in with the just basically getting a debit card, that kind of stuff. So and then off time to time we bring in, like right now we brought in 40, just today we brought in 40 outside contract H2A that came in to help us with some feathering and some new plantings to kind of get us caught up, keep us rolling. So I think that, yeah, that's how we kind of based our workforce. And it worked out pretty good. We didn't know how to attack it, but it worked out pretty good just having people give us nominations or requests and kind of go through that and kind of sort everything out themselves. So.
Okay, Steve. And what about you, Manus? Could you say a few things?
Yeah, so our farm is kind of divided into 3 different areas that just to help minimize driving up and down. So I've got 2 junior managers that each look after about 500-600 acres. And then I have my section that I still maintain as well. And in my section, I've got 3 temporary farm workers that basically manage my whole section. So I meet with them twice a week and they run the show there. Our crews, we rely a lot on team leaders. We run our crews 9 guys in a crew. Our buses can take 9 guys. So it's 8 guys plus the bus driver. So that's the 9-man crew. And everything we do is we try to either do 4 rows or 8 rows at a time. So when we harvest, it's 4 rows. That means 2 guys per row and 1 guy floats. So that's kind of how we run the farm side of it. We have a maintenance department. We've got 5 full-time maintenance guys, Canadian guys, looking after all equipment, farm equipment, vehicles, housing, buildings, everything. On the plant side, they run about 50 to 60 workers per shift. For usually about 60 in the day shift and 50 at night shift. Most of that during the day shift will be from a temp agency out of Toronto. It's all local Vietnamese workers mostly. A few operators, machine operators, that's all Canadians. At the night shift is mostly Mexican guys. So for us we run an ag stream program as well, where workers can stay for a 2-year contract at a time and before they have to get renewed. So we do have about 20 to 30 ag stream guys every year, and that's mostly for the plant. We have a few guys on the farm as well. We've got a full-time HR person in the plant and then also a full-time HR guy on the farm. So he's one of our offshore workers, and he takes care of basically everything that needs to happen from going to the doctor or going to the bank, all that type of stuff. So for all the day-to-day trips, he's in charge of that. And then, yeah, that's about how we run. We currently have around 195 guys here right now. I'm expecting a little bit more here for hand thinning coming soon, and then we'll start shipping some workers to different farms just before harvest.
Thank you, Manus. Daniel, do you want to ask the next set of questions?
Yeah, I'll hop in here. So I'm not following necessarily the outline of things that I had set up, but I'm basing some of this off of what was just said here. I'm seeing quite a large range of sizes of your workforce. I mean, Robert, you have more people working for you than are in some towns here in southern Pennsylvania. And I could say that there are crews here in Pennsylvania where there is maybe only 5 or 7 people that are coming up from Mexico as part of the H-2A program. So there's quite a bit of difference here in what I'm seeing and hearing you say. So I'd like to ask you some questions about, how do you manage that? Both larger size and smaller sizes. 1,000 people showing up, it seems like that would be a very large, very time-consuming operation. And the way you broke it down is you have managers and so forth. What kind of pitfalls did you run into making sure that everybody's on the same page? How do you provide that training on such a large scale to ensure that all your workers are actually, pretty much on the same page with things?
Okay, well, if the worker is going, we used to have workers just show up for 5 or 6 months out of the year. And more recently, it's been more like a 9-month program. And so our program usually begins ramping up right after the last worker's gone home for the year. That's when our human resources department and our crew leaders out in the field begin coming together during the wintertime and preparing things for the arrival of the guys that are not going to be coming until 2 months later. And what that means is going back into the homes and taking all of the linen and replacing all the linen on the beds and repainting and re-cleaning and bringing in maintenance and going through all the houses and getting them all ready for the next year. But it also means trying to be better every year at our orientation, because that's really where we have our biggest impact, is from the time that person gets off of that bus after he arrives from Mexico. You have to imagine that if you're in Mexico and you make your way all the way from Colima to Monterrey, where you have to be processed, the journey that it may take you to get from Colima to Monterrey, and once you get in Monterrey, you might have to be there 3 days being processed. And during then after 3 days of being processed, you have to get on a bus and make a 3 or 4 day journey to your destination in the United States. Now you can imagine how tired and disoriented and disheveled these people are when they get off of that bus. And so that is the moment that we like to have our greatest impact on the employee. And we've learned the hard way, and I have to give credit to my wife. She developed a system 2 or 3 years ago so that when every single worker arrives, when they get off of that bus, we handle them what's called a welcome kit. And inside that welcome kit is toothbrush and toothpaste and shaving cream and soap and everything that they're going to need to be able to go into that building and get some food in their belly and shave and clean and take a shower and feel welcome. We think that's so important. Well, if it's during the daytime, we'll have somebody there to make them a hot meal. If they're arriving during the night, we'll have Domino's pizza. We'll make sure that they have food and a means to get cleaned up and feel like they're at home. The very next morning, we'll start our orientation process. Usually a worker, from the time he arrives here, he won't go into the field for probably a full 2 or 3 days. He'll go to the office and he'll begin a cycle, a circuit of different training exercises. He might go to one orientation that'll teach him about ladder safety. Another orientation will teach him about re-entry signs and pesticide signs and which blocks not to enter and when it's safe to go into a block. He'll talk to people about who to report to if I have a problem. And we'll go through every single scenario that we've encountered over the course of the last 15 years and trying to point them in the right direction. And then me personally, I've made it a personal point to be there when every single bus of H2A workers shows up so that I can welcome them and give them an orientation, remind them why we're here, and then set goals and expectations for the upcoming season. So we think that that's a very important part of the process and training along the way. I always tell the guys when they first get here, if they've been here before, I ask them to raise their hand, and usually that's a large group of the people. And then I ask them if they've never been, if this is their first time here, to raise their hand. And usually that'll be a smaller group of people. And we encourage that smaller group of people, the new arrivals, to lean on the veterans, the guys that have been here for 3, 4, 5, and 6 years, the guys that frankly know how to piece work and they know their way around the H2A program and how we work as a company. We feel like that's real important. And as guys as some people begin to struggle and they're having a hard time integrating into the program, we also have remedial training sessions set up so that we can go in with small teams and do remedial training throughout the year as well. I hope that answered your question.
It does. And I would like some of the other panelists here to chime in and give some information about how you approach it. That's a large crowd of people coming in. It sounds like you've over the years developed a very good way of managing that, and something that people come in, they get the same thing every year. What about the rest of you? What have you adopted? Bobby, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. So the going to the field in 2 to 3 days reminded me of the pandemic we all went through. So we set up some procedures that year or two, and we hosted our guys when they got off the bus. We had the camps full of food and groceries, and they were able to do their quarantine and feel welcomed. That's the biggest thing, is just to feel as though they, you know, they are here for a reason. And we do a lot of training out of the start. It's the same kind of stuff. We are lucky to have a lot of senior people here. We've got guys that are 10 to 15 years, and there's a hierarchy, there's support system. I forgot earlier, we do have health and safety people that are H2A people, but that are delegated to and responsible to, if there is issue, they know where the doctors are, they know where the hospitals are, they know what to do, who to call, all that. And that support has really helped our guys. Some of our guys do their own taxes and stuff. We've helped them figure out how to work with that in New York State and the US. Trying to think of what else, different kind of things. Their culture, they like to have a lot of, like when they arrive, but they like to honor like different parts of the season. So before we prune, there's different meetings, and then after we prune, there's different meetings, and or there's a party, or there's a celebration, and then so on and so forth throughout the season. They like the communication. Their culture does.
Okay.
We've grown in the last, I'd say 15 years, we've grown exponentially. So we've had to come up with things, procedures, and different ideas as to, from anything from a welcome kit to how the facilities get cleaned. A lot of that is just growing pains. If you can do it with 10 guys, then you figure out how your company can do it with 20, and then expound it from there. And it's probably how they built their business the same way. It all starts with one. That's about all I got on that one.
Okay. Manus, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, so I'm not forgetting about you, but I want to hear a little bit from Steve about, if I recall correctly, you said that you've only been doing H2A since 2006. Was that the correct year? So you're a little bit newer at this, than I assume. What have you found to be challenges in getting people welcomed and trained and used to your system and so forth?
Actually, we started our farming process in 2006. The H2A we've been bringing in has only been about 4 years now.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess probably with our regular employees, and it was only by fault. I mean, we didn't really plan that. I mean, it's not something that we like splitting atoms or anything. But when we asked the good people that are our managers, our crew leaders, like, hey, do you have suggestions, for who would you like to bring in, or, make those suggestions as family members, whatever, it kind of smooth things out for us, because they could take them and get them the phones, they could get them to the bank, show them how banking, how to transfer. We obviously took them to and when they first got off the bus, just like the rest of the guys, we met them with we had family members there. We were all grilling. As soon as they got off the bus, they reconnected with family members they haven't seen probably in a lifetime. It was pretty emotional, But this was all it wasn't by design, We just figured, hey, we need to be there, and we need to introduce ourselves, and then all of a sudden, all this, happened unexpectedly. So. But by doing that, it helped us smooth the road. As far as workers, they're happy to be here. They're eager to go. They're ready to run out there and get going and stuff. The biggest hurdle we have is that is basically the language barrier. So you do kind of rely on your certain people that do know how to that can communicate for us. and get the process along. But myself, we are doing trying to learn the Spanish language, to get our own point across, to have our own passion, or have our own discussion, being more what do you call it, personable with them, with the people. So that's probably our biggest hurdle, is just the explanatory. But we do a lot of training, just like the other guys. First thing when we come into the orchard, the first thing we do is we spend about an hour just making sure that they get off, they're comfortable, and that they know what we're going to do, whether it's feathering, whether it's thinning, anything that we're doing, something new to them. I mean, a lot of the guys kind of know how to pick apples that we have gathered up. They understand that part of it. That's the easy part. More difficult for them, but once again, training, communication, and then if they don't get it, we just stop. We start over again. We retrain, and then go back at it. We try to make them feel comfortable and not uneasy. When they panic, if they think they're not doing a good job, then that's when chaos happens, obviously. So.
Okay, you referenced something there that I'm actually going to ask. I used to talk about a little bit, but how do you handle the language barrier? Do you have a professional translator that has come in and helped you, especially in writing up of contracts and so forth? How are you handling that at the moment, Steve? Yeah, we're with an outside contractor that I think it's Great Lakes that does all the the contracts with the H2A part of that program for us. So we go through them as far as the writing up the contracts in Spanish. They come out and they actually train them. So when they do come in, they also come in and train. I guess it would be probably the same thing as every other H2A contractor has to do. So when they do come in, this other Great Lakes comes in and they do the training and set up all the paperwork and all the legalities of it all for us, and then they're off to the races. So explain to them what's expected of them as far as what we've written up in the contract. We can also put in that we want tractor drivers, bus drivers, and they will find all the H2A, the workers that have those qualifications for us. And then as far as the language barrier, I guess, as far as the language barrier, like I said, most of our crew leaders, and I know we rely on our crew leaders as far as that communicate with us that know both languages. So you do kind of drift towards leaning on them to be the people to help out. Anyhow. Okay. All right. Thank you. And so question for our Canadian friends here. If I heard you correctly, you have Mexican, Caribbean, and Vietnamese people. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so the Vietnamese people is mostly local new immigrants to Canada. So they're not part of the seasonal work program. For us, of the temporary foreign worker for us is guys out of the Caribbean and Mexico. So we mostly have Jamaica and Barbados on our farm, out of the Caribbean. And then, like I said, that makes out about 25% of our offshore workforce. And then the rest of them are from Mexico. So our program is a little bit different. Our guys all fly out of Mexico City from Mexico. So the Mexicans always arrive early in the morning. So pickup time is, the flights are all organized through CANAC on our side. So it's always the same time every time. So pickup time is between 9 to 10:30 usually. We always have crews that come in that's somewhat small, no more than 50 guys at a time or on a specific day. We focus a lot on that, like Robert said, that orientation training kind of when the guys show up on the farm. That usually takes a few hours, filling in all the paperwork, getting everything set up, all the documentation we need, and then taking the guys to the houses. They get settled in, all the bedding and stuff is there, and then they go for groceries. So one of the biggest changes we've made this last year is we've noticed a lot of guys want to, they have small loans or something right when they arrive. They want, we used to give guys anywhere between $150 to $200 on arrival for groceries and stuff like that just to get going. And we bumped that number up to $600 this year because we figured a lot of guys, they want to go and do groceries, but they also want to send money home as soon as possible. And that kind of, we saw that as an advance when the workers arrive. And that way the guys don't have to, come and ask for a bunch of small loans all the time. So when our workers arrive, they everyone gets a $600 advance. We do the paperwork. We kind of always pride ourselves on we start working the next day. So day one you arrive, day two you start working. The Caribbean guys is a different story because they always arrive anywhere between 10 p.m. and midnight to the farm. So for those guys, we will always try and organize at least a meal for that night. And then they go through that next day, they'll do their first day orientation and then start the following day. So they kind of miss out one day, but that's kind of how we organize that. And then most of our crew, I would say we run about 10% of our workforce is renewal kind of every year. And a lot of times that's people that's been referred by friends or guys that's here right now. So it makes it really easy for them to adapt. If some, at least if you know one or two guys in the group, then you're not, nothing, it's not all new to you. So we always try, when we have groups come in, try and mix the new guys with the older guys. And like someone else mentioned earlier, let the older guys kind of, show them around and make sure that they know where to go. We are in a small little town. There's not a lot of offshore workers in our area. So our town is small enough. The guys, our rule on the farm is always if we go do groceries once a week. But if you can fill a vehicle with a bunch of guys, they can go, with this permission, they can go any night of the week for a second trip or something else. But we don't allow guys just to go, two guys by themselves to take a vehicle and go to town. But if they can fill the vehicle up with guys, then they're free to go to town. So like I said, small community, most of the guys feel very comfortable driving around here, going to town. We only require international license, really. So we have some dedicated drivers that always drive. So I know when I started here, 10 years ago, there was everyone, they would try and find a bicycle as soon as possible to go to town, right? On the off days or stuff like that. But now that's kind of gone away. You don't see guys driving with bicycles up and down to town really anymore. So like I said, mostly referrals. And like Robert said, I think that first day when the guys arrive is really crucial. And luckily for us, it's never a big batch of guys. So you have time to spend to them like kind of one-on-one.
All right, thank you. You referred to something rather intriguing there about your $600 advance, and I'm going to come back to that and kind of ask the rest of you how you handle wages and so forth in a minute. But there was a question that came in on the Q&A from Jenny, and the question is, and this is open to all of you to address, do you have women in your workforce? And if so, how do you keep and make them feel safe? So we know crews are typically pretty much male dominated. Do you have women on your crews, and can you address her question?
I'll jump in first. Yeah, we don't have any women in our crews. We're only males.
Yes, we do, but we have a totally different location where we have the families and whatnot compared to the H2As. So the H2As are pretty much in a complete different part of the town, to where they have a couple buildings where they hold 30 per building. But we have another location that has, I think it's like 8 or 10 different housings that are set up for families. So we can have the families can kind of be separated and do their own thing.
Bobby, it looked to me like you were about to make a comment.
Well, I don't want to comment too much, but we do not employ any women in the RH2A program. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let the other panelists jump in here if you want to take over questioning for a minute. Mario, I see you've unmuted yourself. It looked like to me like maybe you wanted to
No, can you hear
Daniel.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, Daniel, I think that Rob, you wanted to say something. I had to mute you in some point, so you can unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. I saw you were muted and
Yeah.
I thought you didn't want to say anything. Please.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we do not have any women that are H2A workers, but we do have a lot of women in our workforce, both in our domestic workers. There are a lot of women, but also in our supervisory roles, we have a lot of women. The fact of the matter is the person that oversees all of our H2A program is a woman who started out as a worker in the field and worked her way up to a small crew and then worked her way up to a crew leader and then to a supervisor. And now she oversees the entire H2A program. She is a stern supervisor to those guys, but she's also like a den mother to those guys, and they look to her and they respect her. We have women in our houses cleaning our houses, integrated and working with our H2A guys day in and day out, and have been for many, many years. And we've never, ever, ever had a problem with one of the guys disrespecting one of the women in any way. It's been a great relationship and hasn't been a problem in any way for us. It's been a real benefit and a joy for us, actually.
So I don't know what is your opinion, Robert, but in some cases, the women they do even a better job, even pruning. Even the pruning job is done, the quality control job that they do is great. We don't have so many of those examples, but the growers that they are doing it, I see so they have great employees by hiring them.
Yep, I agree. Our the ladies in our workforce, some of the ladies on the crews, there are specialty training jobs that I would much rather have the ladies do. No question about it. But I found over the years that there's really no limit to what any of the people on the ranch can do if they set their mind to it. So we have an open hire policy. We like to hire from within first. We like to give people the opportunity to advance and to grow. And I always tell people all the time that you can have any job in this company that you want, including mine, because I'm ready to retire in a year or two. So yeah, it's an open field for us. We're really proud of the ladies that we have.
All right, thank you. And if that answered your question, if you got a follow on, please add it to the Q&A there for that. All right, Mario, did you want to jump in and change the topic slightly, or did you just unmute?
No, I still have the culture. I don't know if we want to talk a little more about it. It's also 758 here in New York, but it's something that Bobby mentioned. And I don't know if you guys, panelists, they feel that you have been getting closer to the labor force workforce culture, or you expect them to get used to the American culture. So the question is, as the year go by, Bobby, for example, have you been able to start celebrating birthdays, soccer tournaments, amenities in the facilities, and understanding more their culture? And you getting closer to them perhaps through the years as you improve your labor relationships. I don't know if you can mention something about that.
I was just thinking a little bit more on the last one. I'm a father of two daughters, but the sad part of our world is a lot of politics and referrals and government and liabilities. And if you're not careful with some of these programs, you can get in lawsuits that can cost your business millions of dollars. And, it's a very tricky situation, and referrals are probably the biggest hinder of the program, because you have to advertise ahead of time, and if you have to hire people that do get referred by the H2A. And the worst thing about I've seen different farms get involved in is they get people that they have to hire, and they're absolutely not productive. and it can really hinder the business, and makes it so it snowballs and you can never get out of it. Anyways, sorry to kind of just wanted to add a few more thoughts there. The culture, it's an amazing culture. We worked for years. When I was a kid, we worked with Jamaica, and that culture is really cool. They have their own style. They have their own beat. They move at their own pace. We upscaled our small fruits back in mid 2000s, and we had a Mexican domestic crew leader at the time, and so we started bringing in people from Mexico, and they work off of respect. That whole country is off of respect. Once you get that, then you kind of unlock the doors, and it's really also neat to see them become more involved in our community. I'm really good friends with one of our guys. We text all the time when he's not here, like Christmas and stuff. We send each other pictures and everything. There's another kid that's friends with some of our local guys, and they go to different family events with them. There's a little school down the road. They teach English classes, and they also teach computer classes. So some of the people, they like to go down and check that out and participate, and they get a little plaque when they graduate, per se. It's neat. I would say the best companies, you learn about their culture and they learn about yours. You share it together, and that's where the growth is, the value.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Mario, if you don't mind, I'd like to follow on with that. From our practice session, I guess, when we met most of you that are on this panel and had our little run through of this. Robert, you mentioned how you do recruiting, and you told me, or if I'm remembering correctly, you told us that you actually go down to Mexico and you go through the towns to try to get to know the people. And to me, that addresses kind of Mario's question about this, is learning about their culture and adapting to it. Can you speak to that a little bit about your method for recruiting people, or how you thought about it?
Culture is my favorite part of this whole thing. So I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm general manager of a large corporation, but also I'm a pastor. My degree is in theology. My wife and I are missionaries. We travel all over the world, but our special place is Mexico. And I have traveled in and out of every state throughout Mexico. And the way that we like to find our employees is we like to go to some of the poorest pueblos way in the back reaches of Mexico. And we really like to get to know communities. We will go into a community and we'll get to know them, and we'll bring workers from that community. If they do really good, we'll go back and we'll bring more workers from that community. And it's been a wonderful process of going into a village the very first year, and then seeing the sewer running down the middle of the street, and a town in just total disarray and on the brink of extinction in some cases. And then all of a sudden you bring 40 or 50 guys from that community, and now all of a sudden you have $30,000 every single month pouring back into that community. And it's just been such a blessing over the last 10 or 15 years to see all of a sudden a library is being built or a school is being built. And we've really tried to engage with both sides of the border. So when the last apple's picked, I follow the guys home. And we've done projects with soccer fields, and we've adopted an orphanage in Oaxaca. And we go to each village and we buy Christmas for the kids of the people that work for us every year, and we get to know them and their families. And when they come back up here, we think it's really important that we recognize that they also have their culture, not just one culture of Mexico, but there are many, many different cultures throughout Mexico. Colima has a very different culture than Oaxaca has. And Oaxaca has a very different culture than Chiapas or Puebla has. And so it's nice to be able to understand all those different communities. And so when they come back here, we don't diminish that culture. What we do is we'll put them in floors of 25 people, and they'll be with their own community. And they're real proud of the fact that crew represents Puebla. Like they are so proud of that. And they're so proud of the fact that if they represent Puebla well, then we're going to go back to Puebla and we're going to bring more and more people from Puebla. So that's a big part of it. But we also try to help them understand our culture. We try to go down on Wednesday evenings as much as we can and teach ESL classes. My wife and I teach ESL classes to the guys on Wednesday night. And they love that. We'll go into camps that have 100 people. And it's totally voluntary. They can show up or not show up. But 97 out of 100 people will show up every single time. They want to be a part of that. They want to learn the American culture. 4th of July and Memorial Day and Labor Day, we'll load them up on buses and we'll bring them into the fireworks show and we'll bring them into the parade and try to integrate them into the community. But it's also important to recognize their birthdays. Every Saturday this time of the year, my wife and I spend our Saturdays having birthday celebrations for all the H2A guys, and we'll have cake and we'll have carne asadas, and there'll be a soccer tournament where one camp will challenge the other camp, and it's just the culture is the most beautiful part of the whole thing. Yeah, I love raising apples, and I love being a grower, packer, shipper, but I do the job because of a love for people, and I just love the Mexican culture. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, culture's great.
Okay, I don't want to just focus on you, but I do want to ask you a quick question on this, because that is so fascinating to me, the way you actually do this, the involvement and the love that you have for people. What would you recommend to somebody who's a smaller grower, who has fewer employees than what you have? How could they do or adopt the principles that you have? I mean, how could somebody who is from here in central Pennsylvania make an arrangement to go down to Mexico to visit someplace, or come from Canada and go down to Mexico and just meet people? How did you get?
Same way I did it. I was the very first person in the state of Washington to bring the first 40 H2A people here to Washington State. And when I did, everybody laughed at me. They thought it was the craziest thing they'd ever heard of. But I did it with just a small group of people. I asked the people that work for me, hey, do you know a little village down in Mexico that I could go visit and maybe find some workers at? So they go, oh yeah, you could go to my little village down in Colima and come, I'll introduce you to the mayor of the town. That's very important, by the way. You always want to meet with the mayor of whatever village it is, so that you're accepted into the community and so that they're a part of what's going on. But just start small. Just ask one of the people that already works for you, hey, can I go visit your village? They'll be happy to host you. And just start small, 5, 6, 7 people. And then somebody said it earlier. That's how I've done it. I started with a small group. I learned how to do a small group. And then I did a little bigger group. And then everything after that was just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I know it's scary to get started, but it's really just a matter of starting small. And if you ever want to get started and you have questions, you can certainly give me a call anytime. I'd be happy to help.
Sorry, Daniel. Robert, can I ask you one more question? I recall your vacation time policy. Could you share with the audience the way how you implement that? That's very unique.
Yeah. So what we try to do is, of course, the work is the most important thing, but we feel like it's very important that our employees are able to go home and visit their families. So when we finished pruning season at the end of the season this year, we gave everyone the opportunity to go home. And a great number of the people went back home, but also a great number of people decided that they wanted a vacation here in the United States. And they went to Glacier Park, and they went to Yellowstone Park, and they went to see the Grand Canyon. And we're getting ready to do that again. We're going to have cherry harvest start here in a couple of weeks. And it's going to last for about 3 weeks. And as it finishes up, we're going to begin to send guys home for a month this time. We're way ahead on our work schedule. So we're going to let guys go home for a month, and they're going to be able to visit their families, or to be able to travel here internally within the United States, wherever they choose to go.
Great. It's amazing.
Are you able to do that in Canada? Are your workers able to take breaks like that, or would you even consider doing it? I don't know if you even do that.
I would like to celebrate birthdays every weekend. Like, cake is pretty good. So our program is a little different. Our guys have to register to be a part of our program. So it's not, you can't recruit anyone into the program. The lineup or the waiting time to get into the program can be extensive, up to 3 to 5 years for new people to join the program. The program is managed between the Canadian government, the Mexican government, or the representative countries, and an organization that represents the growers called farms. So once you're in the program, you can be requested by different farms. You can go back to the same farm all the time, but it's really hard for new people to enter the program. Now, on the Ag Stream side, which is a 2-year contract, you can, basically, like Robert, go down and recruit any person you want. But just on the temporary farm worker program, they need to be in the program. Now, to give you an idea, we end up with almost 200 guys out of Mexico every year, and I haven't found more than 3 guys that know each other or that come from the same town. So all the guys are scattered all over Mexico. So the guys become real good friends up here, but then once they go home, they never see each other or talk. Well, maybe they chat a little bit, but they never see each other until they come back the following season. So I guess in that way, the H2A program really has an advantage from bringing multiple people from the same town and kind of keeping that local culture going. For us, from the Caribbean side, it's a totally different operation, because most of our Jamaican or Barbados workers, they've got family and friends up here in Canada. So usually that first day the guys arrive, they've got friends and family already showing up to the farm, coming to say hi to the guys and basically meeting them, bringing them some supply stuff they need. So those guys, they integrate into the community a lot better because there's no language barrier. For the Mexican guys, it's a little different. There is some, in each area or county, there is usually some of these nonprofit organizations that do reach out to the farms and look after the offshore workers voluntarily. And usually they can speak whatever native language they need to. The one close to us, they also organizes church events every now and then. But what I gather is, like, we run a fairly tight crew, we don't use a lot of workers for the amount of work we have. And usually we've had it in the past where some of these, non-for-profit organizations would schedule a soccer event or something like that. And then at the end of the day, the workers rather decide, like, hey, listen, we rather want to work than take a day off. So we do try and balance the amount of hours we give the workers, because just because of efficiency as well. I'd rather have the guy work 60 hours and be fairly efficient than working 80 hours and just cutting on the pace a little bit. So we try and work. Normally, we want to work 6.5 days a week. We tend not to work two full weekends in a row. So that's really the thing. For the Ag Stream, it's a little different. That's our 2-year program. We have those workers do get vacation pay as well, whereas our temporary farm workers do not receive vacation pay. So that's a little different. So they get that extra 4%. But then what we try and do for them is we always hold that back. And then usually at some point within their 2 years, they would go home to Mexico and go and visit the family for 4 to 5 weeks. It's very seldom that someone will stay a full 2 years straight up here. So usually, it's usually right after, I would say, March, April. Once the packing starts slowing down, then they'll rotate, and maybe a third of the crew will go on vacation, and then as they come back, the next bunch will go down. So I have one guy going home this coming week. on the temporary farm worker program for, I guess, one of his kids' graduation. And then he's coming back in 2 weeks again. So they can do that. We do allow that. It is costly, right? Because they have to fly down to Mexico. It'll cost them, anywhere between $1,100-1,200 for the airfare. And then a lot of workers still need to take an inbound flight from Mexico City to whatever state they live in. So that kind of adds up. So that deters most guys to go back on a vacation. But normally we do not have some of the temporary farm workers going back home.
Steve, if you have anything to add, go ahead and unmute. Otherwise, I've got another question I'm going to jump to. So,
no, we're good. Yeah, we're kind of the basis too with the basically do the same programs they kind of do, not so much as going down to Mexico and visiting and doing all that. I need to up my game there and go. So I'll sign up with the church in the next go around. Thank you, though. That's very impressive, Robert.
Yeah, actually, you got a comment in the chat there saying that it's amazing how you relate to the workers and go down to Mexico, Robert. Okay, so this has twice now brought up things that kind of lead into another set of questions here. Earlier, you referenced giving a $600 advance to people, and now you just referenced the amount of hours that you work. So in the H-2A program, there's set wages per hour, but you're able to change that if you switch to piecemeal work, by the piece, whatever, however you want to phrase it. So toss this out to everybody. Which do you find to be more effective and more cost effective for you and more effective production wise? Do you go pretty much stick with a straight hourly rate? Have you convinced people that piece rate is better? What are your thoughts on that? And, what would you recommend to people who are working with H-2A labor as far as how to structure the pay and the wages?
Well, I can go first. So just back to the culture part quickly. We have a big Canadian flag hanging at our plant, but on the main farm, we've got a Mexican flag hanging there. So the guys do feel at home when they show up from the bus from the airport. So for us, we work just straight hours. We pay minimum wage, all the foreign workers. The hours range anywhere. We try not to go under 60 hours a week. We know the goal for the workers are to make money as well when they are here. And I've heard a lot of times guys would say if they sit in the bunkhouse, they miss the family too much. So they want to, stay busy. They rather come up for a shorter period of time and work a little longer hours than staying up here for an extended period of time and not making a whole lot of money. In harvest time, we do up the hours quite a bit, just to get the crop in. It's mostly weather dependent, to be honest. That's also the tricky part in the fall. Our days get really short, so you can't really go over 70 hours a week. Because the days just get too short. I would love to start doing a little more piecework. We still have to basically guarantee that every employee the minimum wage if they don't meet the target. But I do think there's a lot to be said for incentivizing workers. I always feel like not every two workers work at the same pace, and the faster guy or the better worker needs to earn more. So right now, I wish that we can increase our management staff a little bit so that we can really implement it, because I do know that if you go to piecework, you need to make sure that everything is correct, because you want all the employees to trust the system. You don't want to have any holes in your system, and you need to give feedback on a daily basis. So we haven't done any piecework yet, but for sure in the future, I can see some piecework coming for us. We do measure a lot, and from just measuring trees per guy per day from pruning and stuff like that, just measuring that alone increases the productivity. So I do think that is valid in piecework, but currently we do not use it.
Bobby, go for it.
Sure. Our berries, we do an hourly base and then a piece incentive. So every box they get is like $1 or whatever on top of their base. That works really good for individual work. And then our apples are all harvested in teams. We just set expectations based on the variety. If it's Honeycrisp stem clip, it's so many bins a day versus Gala versus like a strip pick variety, etc. The trickiest thing we're working on is just collecting or measuring the in season, the tree training, the tree thinning, or the apple thinning, trying to get some metrics on that. We're getting there. We're getting there. I saw Jacob Waffler on here earlier. His dad's doing some pretty neat stuff at like how many they're just coming up with lots of different feet per hour or different ways to measure that kind of stuff. My latest idea was we could have our automated platforms, we could have different notches for different jobs, like to just kind of fix the speeds. And then it's kind of an easy execution. You can tell the supervisor, hey, we're doing this today. We want you going this fast. And it's already pre-calculated. Because when you're dealing with 2,000 trees per acre, it's just kind of hard to do a piece like that in the middle of the season. That's what we do.
Steve or Robert, do you want to jump in there? I know, Steve, that you use platforms up the River Ridge. Has that affected things?
Yeah. So we spent quite a bit of time on it.
We're kind of losing you here, Steve. Maybe you could cut your video and that might help.
With the, we two pennies per cut. Right. Yeah, let me try that. How's that?
There you go.
Does that work?
Yeah, we can. So far, yes.
Okay, good again?
Yes.
All right. We're down to like two pennies per tape, 2 pennies per cut, defruiting. But I go out there ahead of time and me and the girl that helps me with the contracts. If we're taking off, let's say we're doing 4 cuts per limb or 5 cuts per limb or deflowering, we got it all the way down to pennies is what it takes for us to do it. And that time, we kind of judge ourselves between the poles. And then we come up with a price per row. So they know before they even get started. I mean, they always want to know what the price is before they get started. And then we go that route. And then if you get this many rows done, this is what the end of the day is. It just makes them feel more comfortable getting started. But we definitely piece rate has been a real benefit for us. We don't mind if they make more than rate. Because they always come out of that block or out of that orchard sooner. It would be every time we've done it hourly. And it's just help. They make more money, we save money.
Robert, I believe you said the same thing in our earlier discussion, that you prefer the piecework. Is that correct?
Yeah, I love piece rate, no question. I love piece rate, and the workers love piece rate. I challenged a manager just a couple of weeks ago to do half of a block. He was training a block. I asked him to do half of the block on piece rate and half of the block by the hour. And our minimum wage here, our prevailing wage for H2A is $17.41 an hour. So the minimum we can pay someone is $17.41 an hour. So he did half of the block by the hour and half of the block on piece rate. And at the end of the day, the guys on piece rate averaged $25 an hour. And the block ended up costing me $360 an acre. And the other half of the block they did by the hour cost $980 an acre. So it saves by about half going to piece rate. It's better for us. It's better for them. But it does require some organization. Somebody mentioned it. You have to be out ahead of the workers and figure out everything you're going to need for the job. And you have to figure out the price in advance so that when they go into the field, everybody knows what the deal is. And yeah, for me, piece rate is far better for everybody all the way around. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Christy or Bernadita or Anna, did you have any questions you wanted to ask? Otherwise, we do have a couple questions in the Q&A and chat that I would like to get to before we hit our 8:30 mark.
Yeah, go ahead with the questions in the chat. I think there's a couple of good ones there.
Okay. Yeah, so this is from Philip Martin, who I believe is the Philip Martin that will be with us on the 16th for our next virtual meetup. It's hard to say because there's a Philip Martin who just graduated from Penn State. So I believe you're the Philip Martin who's going to be talking. So his questions are, what would you like to see change in the current H2A and SAWP regs? And then this one here, which I'd like the growers to address first, is do you mix H2A and U.S. workers and crews, or do you keep them separate? Let's start with that, and then let's do the blanket question about what do you want to see changed in the regulations? And that goes nowhere.
We tend to keep them separate, although they do mix. Sometimes an H2A crew will have a local crew leader, or sometimes they'll be working in a trellis crew or something alongside with the local workers. So we don't try to keep them separated by any means, but they tend to be on different crews. If I were going to change anything about the program, I would change the overburdensome regulations and paperwork and the cost. It's just kind of become a government piggy bank in so many ways with all the fees and regulations. It makes it a little cost prohibitive. But apart from that, I'm a big believer in the program. So.
It looks like you were going to hit microphone there.
Yeah, I can jump in. I don't really mix my U.S. workers and my no, just kidding. I don't have U.S. workers. So for me, the biggest change I would make is really allowing a little more free flow of workers in between farms. We have a really a lot of too much oversight on movement of workers between different farms, different commodities, because not everyone needs the workers all the time, but we need a lot of workers up here. So that'll ease a lot if I can go and help my neighbors or they can come and help me. And then also for me, a big thing is in our farm, we're transitioning to a lot more skilled type of worker. Really from the type of workers we're recruiting now or trying to bring up, we don't just take unnamed workers anymore. In our Ag Stream program, we actually sit down, interview workers. You know, we've got a bunch of workers that's got university degrees and stuff like that, running machinery, pre-sizes, stuff like that. So I see our farm transitioning to a higher skilled type of worker, and I would like to see easier access for those type of workers to actually stay here permanently. We do have a few guys that we're busy sponsoring or helping as much as we can for them to settle here in Canada, and it's hard. It's really hard, and they do not. You know, I would have thought that with COVID and the supply chain issues and the focus on labor, it would have helped a little bit. But I guess it's, you know, everyone kind of forgot about all the issues we had. But it's really hard for us to have workers come and settle here in the agriculture industry. Agriculture is still not really seen as a high priority for labor needs, and I think a lot of them do not realize how skilled these workers are. It's really hard. It's hard work, and it's really a very small amount of people that can do the job. And like I said, I would love to have a lot of these people settle here permanently with their families.
I would agree with that last comment. It would be really nice to have some kind of a future pathway for some of these people. I think what I would like to see change is some less state regulation, especially with a federally based program. It's going to create competition between different states as things such as overtime, taxes, wage rates, they continue to change state by state. And I think these workers are a lot smarter maybe some of our government officials realizing that if I was a worker, I'm going to work where there's the most money and the most hours available. It's not hard to figure out. The other thing is, it's just the politics, the whole thing. We had our New York State DOL here today, and they wanted to talk to all of our federal H-2A employees, and then they asked us to leave the field we were in. Like, oh, well. I had to bite my tongue as to how I was going to respond to that. But yeah, I just wish some of that would kind of go away, because we're all here to work and earn a living for our families. That's all I have on that one. Thanks.
Steve, did you have any comments on that question?
Yeah, we've integrated all with the people. It's been very fine with the regular River Ridge employees that we have, and with the H-2As. A lot of the River Ridge employees are inspectors, and they're also the family members here and there. If we do have an issue, we just talk to the family members, like, Aunt Susanna, hey, nephew so-and-so, needs to step it up and whatever, and she usually takes care of it. So like I said, a lot of the bumps in the road smooth themselves out in that aspect. Same thing with with our own personal H-2A contract. They would probably take up a one person's full-time job to do that. And sometimes you feel a little nervous about what you should do, not do. Hey, just drop them off back at the camp and get the heck out of there. And, but I guess it kind of, the federal, makes you a little bit nervous. But as we've gotten comfortable with it, I should probably know more about it, the legalities of it. But if our outside contracts that we use are very concerned about what they have going on with their ability to contract H-2As. It's just a little too much sometimes, I guess. So, like I said, I don't know all the legalities of it, but you get nervous about losing your ability to be able to bring these people back, and then have to stick with an outside contractor.
All right. Well, we've hit the 8:30 mark. Anna, should we go ahead and do the round robin final thoughts, or what? How do you want to proceed, since you're kind of the master of ceremonies here?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I apologize for turning my video off just for a poor connection, but I've been here the whole time. I think it'd be nice to do a round robin. We're a little bit past 8:30 now, but if you guys have the time, if you have one more thought that you want to add, or what you're doing looking into the future, what changes you're making, or opportunities do you see, especially as we move to adopt more technology. I think all of you guys have thought a lot about that, and the rest of this series, we're going to focus on that as well. So if there's something you'd like to add quick, if we could go around one more time, something that you feel like hasn't been put on the table yet, specifically pertaining to technology in the future. So if you want to start, we can do the same order we started with. Maybe Rob, go first.
Okay, yes, I'd be happy to go first. The thing that I would like to focus on is integrating H-2A guys into other areas of our workforce. When they first started coming up here, they only did manual labor, but I agree with one of the earlier panelists. We're looking for specialized laborers. I have guys working for me that have degrees in mechanical engineering, and I place those guys in positions such as biologist and horticulturist, and we want to be able to find out what people's gifts are and put them in a place that benefits them and benefits the company. And I'm not a real techno nerdy kind of guy, but I have some H-2A guys that really understand technology, and to be able to use more technology and have them help us implement that is going to be very important for us moving forward. Our H2A guys are a little different than maybe some of the earlier ones that I heard. Our H2A guys, they don't want to come to the United States and move to the United States. They have their families and their villages in Mexico. And what they really want to do is create a better life for themselves. And so nothing makes me happier than when I have a guy come up to me at the end of the year and says to me, Roberto, I've been saving for the last 10 years and I finally saved up enough money to buy my own farm, or I've started my own Uber business, or I've started my own company and I'm not going to be coming back. As much as people coming back and a good return rate is the most important thing to us, the other most important thing to us is seeing our people have successful lives and be able to live in their hometown and raise their families up in their hometowns in Mexico where they want to. So I'm just happy to be a part of that too. So that would be it for me.
Thank you. Bobby, do you want to add your final contribution here?
Sure. I kind of stumbled on a few thoughts. I'll have to just kind of wing it here. Personally, I was going through, one of my guys asked me for a photograph the other day. He was working on an underground irrigation project. And I knew what year it was. So I went back in my files, and we're big on photographs here. And that year I took a lot of different photos of just people and fruit and different things. And then last year I didn't do a lot of that. So personally, one of my goals is to just keep interacting and with our workers and just be their cheerleader. That's the biggest thing that I think, as we can get caught up in life or work and we can forget about that. And I want to continue to develop our company culture more and more and more. And I don't know what the future holds for us, but I think by continuing to invest in our people, we will be able to find that. So thank you.
Wonderful. What a great message. I've really enjoyed learning from all the panelists, but such nice storytelling tonight and learning about the culture and the people across the board. Steve, do you want to add something as a last thought, or something about technology? I know River Ridge is pretty forward looking.
Yeah. So for us, the technology, I mean, there's plenty, a couple of stories. One gal, she's been with us ever since they started the farm, and went to working labor in the orchards, and then we started a cider plant, and she was able to show her interest in it, and that she can brought some of her friends in and can run the floor and whatnot. And then we started with some Fred Pryor programs with her, and she started learning PowerPoints and Famous and a few other programs they were using. So just to see her take her family and maneuver to a spot that was just bettering herself, and us be able to help with that was great. And it's not the only story. A lot of the guys that never drove tractors before, or thought they would be always thought they would have to be manual labor. You see them going to tractors and they make mistakes, but they're excited about it. Some have moved on, took that experience and moved on and whatnot. But we see that with our H2A spots too. More programming with irrigations and whatnot, and whatever else. One we did.
Steve, you're cutting in and out again. Maybe I don't know what to do about it. Can you hear me?
And that's a hard thing is to make these programs to train. But when they do complete it and they're part more of the company where we need them, and they for us is just seeing people moving and then seeing what we're doing technology wise as far as the different tech. Hopefully it makes them, it does makes them feel work. Okay, we're good.
Okay, looks like Steve's got maybe a poor connection. He dropped off. So sorry about that. Let's see. Manus, do you want to add something that's your final thoughts or forward to the
You guys
future?
kind of mentioned everything already. I would just say that for me, like I said, everyone seemed to have a lot of positive feedback of both programs. And at the end of the day, we really rely on all these workers. The biggest thing that I've realized, I would say in the last 3 years, is really seeing how guys, how their faces light up once you pass on a lot more responsibility to them, right? And everyone taking ownership of their own location or their own farm that they kind of manage. And I would encourage other growers to do the same. Is, once you have the training in place and you start handing off a lot of responsibility, you'll see a different side of a lot of these workers.
Thank you. And thank you all so much again. I just want to say again, what a pleasure it's been to hear all of your experiences and learn hear all of your stories and learn how you're managing your workforce. It's really inspirational. So I guess before we go, I just wanted to remind everyone that's on the webinar, thank you all for participating first and for joining us and asking a few questions. But just to remind you, we're going to have another webinar in a couple of weeks. And this webinar will again focus on labor management and workforce. But we've asked a couple of specialists in other part of the industry, not growers, to talk to us about some of the concepts and complications around labor. So I hope that many of you will join us for that. And then the next two webinars will focus more on technology. So well, a lot to look forward to, and we hope you'll come back and bring your questions next time. So thanks again to everyone, all the extension folks for participating too. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
It's good to get to know all of you.